So, hello, good morning, viewers at home. I wish you all a happy Boxing Day. Yeah, today is another day on our educational series of Omega Bio-Edutainment. And today we are once again, as you will see it on the screen, as you will see it, microbial interactions. So, and we are going to look at different terms and terminologies. So, thereafter, we are going to look at what a microbial community will always look like. Don't forget that I said sometimes ago that this course ought to be studied um, separately, where we have microbial evolution and ecology. Most often, since the beginning of our educational series on this course, we have actually dwelt too long on microbial evolution, what evolution is all about, and what are the basic principles of RNA world, the first world, how the first organism actually came into being, and a lot of things like that. Also, we also furthered on trying to know how about taxonomy, that is how microorganisms could be classified into their various taxa, and that was when we now look at different ways or different characteristics, different microbiological techniques that we can use in classification of microorganisms. So we ended it with a short quiz where we have you to test your knowledge so far in all the earlier videos that we have on Omega Bio-Edutainment. And as a kind of feedback, I'm very sure that most of you will know now that that quiz is readily available for you anywhere, anytime. That's the essence of this online interaction. You could actually do it, get access to it at any time of your convenience, anytime you wish. Okay, so and this is going to be the second part, and it has to do with microbial interactions, and that is talking about ecology, microbial ecology. That is the second part of this course. Now, don't forget that ecology or ecological studies actually has to do with the environment, and it has to do with biotic and abiotic, that is living and non-living. So that is why ecology of microorganism will always involve physiological and behavioral interaction. That is how microorganisms are able to interact with each other in the same community. By now, you already know what species is all about. You know what we call a taxonomic hierarchy. So, how can they interact with each other? Don't forget that any organism, be it microorganism or any organism at all, that cannot interact, communicate with the environment that organism is, that means in no time that organism will will cease to exist. And that is more reason that more than ever before, evolution of microorganisms is very, very real. Very, very real. So, and that is why we have come on a different level today, and that is talking about microbial interactions. So, just like I told you, as a way of introducing any course to you, whenever you have any course or any language, so each of these language we actually have to start with getting yourself acquainted, getting yourself used to the language, the alphabet, That's what have you. So, and that's why we are going to look at 14 between 14 and 15 different terms and terminologies that you can actually come across them during the course of this course. The first one we are going to look at is Commensalism. So what do we mean by Commensalism? Don't forget that when we talk about microbial interactions, I have told you that microorganisms do interact with each other. That is, microorganisms of the same species, they will tend to interact, they will tend to crosstalk with each other, irrespective of the level of organization of any cell. They have that capability of communicating with each other, have the capability of interacting with each other, just like every other physiological or metabolic processes, whereby before any organism will decide to go on, into that organism, there must be a kind of signal that will come from somewhere, and that signal will be correctly interpreted by the other parts of that same cell. It could be an organism, sorry, it could be an organelle, it could be a kind of communication between different molecules. So they tend to interact with each other. They also tend to interact with the environment or with other organisms that are not even microorganisms. So they tend to interact it. And that's the reason why today, just like I said, we are going to look at how do they interact with one another, how do they interact with the environment, and how do they actually interact with other microorganisms which could be of bigger sizes than they are. So, and that is why we will first of all talk about what is amensalism. Okay, amensalism is a kind of relationship in which the product of one organism tend to go against the other. Don't forget, I said interaction. When microorganisms interact with one another, if they are the product produced by one organism is now having a negative effect on another one, such a kind of interaction is better known and is known as amensalism. So we ought to know that. So that is when you now have organism A and B. So when you now look at the interaction, it could be A that is going to have a negative effect on B, or it could be B that will be having a negative effect on A as well. But whatever interaction it could be within between the organism, whichever organism that microorganism would tend to undergo a kind of interaction with, if the product or if any of the member has a kind of negative effect on the other one, it is said to be in amensalistic interaction. So that is a micro, that is what you should also know. Okay, the next one is Commensalism. Commensalism, this is a kind of organization. This is a kind of organization when you have one organism that is living within or living on another organism. Two of them are actually existing together, and by the time they are existing together, that kind of association is such that none of the two organisms is having a negative effect on another one. Such kind of interaction is said to be commensalistic. So the existence of one organism does not have any injurious effect on the second one. So it's not having any injurious effect on the second one. Such an association can be regarded as commensals. Then again, not only that, whether it has an injurious effect, also if it does not even have any benefits, they are just existing for the sake of being coming together. They are existing. So without injuring, without an act of maybe a kind of benefit to each other. So that kind of association is said to be in commensalistic association. And the third one, which is competition. This is a kind of interaction. This is a kind of interaction that exists between organisms, between microorganisms. It could be between microorganisms, or it could be between microorganism and another higher organism, in which two of them, they are competing. They are competing for certain resources. So that they are competing for certain resources. So these resources can be limited, or these resources can also be abundant. But in an interaction whereby you have these organisms coming together, they have the same focus. They want to utilize space. They want to compete for oxygen. They want to compete for different kind of food, like nutrition. This kind of interaction between these organisms is said to be in competitive situation. So that is what we call competition. That kind of association is said to be in a competitive association. And don't forget, one of the basic attributes, or the basic mechanism, or the basic ingredients by which evolution will occur, by which speciation will occur, is that organisms must compete with each other. Don't forget the law of survival of the fittest. Organisms that you found them in a new environment, organisms that want to exist in a new environment, must make sure that that organism cannot exist in isolation. So that means that organism should be able to compete for the same space, for the same resources with another kind of organism. And such that is what is called competitive association. Competitive association. Okay. Then we will look at the fourth term or terminology, which is a competition exclusive principle. Sorry, competitive should be competitive exclusive principle. And this is a situation or kind of competition in which two organisms compete for the same resources, but one of these organisms that compete, the other one now exists to be more successful than the other. That type of competition is what is called competitive exclusive principle. So what we are saying in essence is that wherever there is a competition must occur. But whenever there is competition, that competition cannot be two of them cannot exist together at the same level. Although at the point in time, they will tend to coexist with each other. But even if they are tending to coexist with each other, what it means that one of the two organisms in question will be more successful than the other one. So such kind of belief is what is called competitive exclusion principle. Okay. Then the next one, which is number 5, is what is called consortium. Consortium. This is a kind of interaction or interrelationship whereby there is a physical association between two organisms. Physical association between two organisms, and when these two organisms associate together, they must be of different. They are two different organisms. So these two organisms, physical association of two different organisms, in which the one organism, in which the two organisms will benefit. So it's a kind of that is a kind of consortium. So they tend to exist in a community, and in that community, there's now an interaction between two different organisms, and these two different organisms, their level of association is now benefiting to each of them. If they are competing for shelter, the shelter is going to benefit each of them. And don't forget that this kind of association is a kind of association that has to be physical. Everybody will see at which level they are associating together. So that is what is called a consortium. So the next thing after that consortium is a corporation. And just like you see it, well, the word corporation, that is a very positive association, in which there is nothing like one has an obligation to fulfill on the other one. Association between two organisms, and in this kind of association, none of the existence of one organism tend to have a that must be a must. It's not a must. It is not a must. So that is why this kind of association is what is called corporation. So they tend to associate together, and by the time they associate together, what we see is that there is a kind of a cooperation between them. Then the next one is ectosymbiosis. Just from the word ecto is actually talking about an organism that lives on or in or outside. So ectosymbiont, that lives on or outside another organism in a symbiotic manner. So that is what is called ectosymbiont. So these two organisms, they tend to be a kind of association in which one organism is existing on another, and this one is what you can see physically. That is ectosymbiont. And the next one is endosymbiont. Just like what we know of the theory of endosymbiosis, bigger organisms swallow. So you will see that those organisms that were swallowed became the internal organelle of a living cell. So that kind of association is said to be endosymbiotic association. So one organism will live within another organism in a very symbiotic manner. And when we say something is symbiotic, you know what it means. That is mutualism. Then the next thing we will look at is what is called gnotobiotic. So this is animal that are germ free. These are animals that they are germ free. They do not have microorganisms on them. So that kind of association is said to be a kind of gnotobiotic association. Then the next one that we need to know is called microflora, or what we call microbiota. So this is a typical of normal organism that are found. So it is a situation whereby you have microorganisms, prokaryotic organisms that they tend to live on the eukaryotic organism. That kind of organism is said to be microbiota. That is micro from microorganism or micro organisms, then biota. So it's living on another organisms that are alive, but they are eukaryotic. So that is called microbiota. And that of the next one is microbiomes. Microbiomes, you must have been coming across this word often and often. These are the this is actually referring to as the all the genes of the hosts, all the genes of the hosts, including. So whenever you want to, for example, now if you want to do what is called a microbiota, I mean microbiomes of an organism now. For example, take for example man. So we are going to consider the totality of all the genes in man. Then in all other genes of other organisms that are also found on that on that man is also what you consider. So that is what is called the microbiomes. So it has to do with the totality of the genes of the host as well as other microorganisms that exist on that microorganism. So that is what we call microbiomes. So and the next one, which is mutualism. It is a typical mutualistic or symbiotic association in which two partners exist together. Two microorganisms have decided to exist together, and by the time they exist together, two of them are benefiting, and that's why they call it mutualism. Mutual benefit. That is that. The next one, which is the 13th one, is what we call parasitism. It is actually very familiar with the word parasites. Parasitism. This is an association in which one organism that is usually smaller in size has deceased in the body or on the body, that is within the host or outside the host, in collaboration in which one of them benefits. So that is what is called parasitism. So one is benefiting, the other one is being harmed. That is the essence of so if there is going to be any kind of association in which one organism is not going to lose at the end of the day, that association cannot be regarded as a parasitic association. So, and that is what is called parasitism. This is a kind of association in which two organisms or one organism live within or outside another host. In terms of sizes, the host is always bigger than the parasite. So the visiting or the visitor will be regarded as the parasite, whereas the landlord will be regarded as the host. So this is a kind of association. It's not unlike a mutualism where two of them, which is symbiotic, where two of them benefit. Parasitism is such that one is benefiting and the other one is getting injured at the end of the day. And you can think of different types of parasites in this situation. So it's also kind of a microbial interaction. Don't forget that I said tend to exist in their diverse population. They tend to exist within a community, and within this community they will have to interact with each other, that is of the same species. Within the same species they also tend to interact interact with others that are not definitely they are not of the same species. So one could be eukaryotic, the other one could be prokaryotic. So that kind of association is exactly what is called a microbial interaction. And the next one, which is going to be the next one is a pathogen. When you look at patho will come from pathological, disease causing, disease causing, manifestation of symptoms, manifestation of the effects, the negative effect of their association. So it's a kind of association in which a virus, a bacteria, a bacterium or other kind of infectious agents will ever cause disease. Just like I told you, patho from pathological, disease causing. So it could be that a bacterium has decided to live on another bacterium, on an host, and that host at the end of the day, or their association or their level of interaction is going to lead to a disease condition, and that visitor is said to be a pathogen. A pathogen. So the last one, which we do not have on the board, is symbiosis. Symbiosis. Don't forget the word symbiosis. Similar, symmetry. So symbiosis. Similar, bio, that is biosis, that is what? Living organism. So when you have two living organisms living together or in close proximity with each other, but two of these organisms are not, they are not similar. So that is, they are symmetry, they are asymmetry, they are not symmetrical. So that is telling us that that is the word symbiosis. So two of them will tend to live together, but they are two organisms of different organisms. They have very dissimilar characteristics, and each of them will now tend to live together and interact with each other. That is said to be a kind of symbiotic association. So the next thing that we are going to look at is let's try and look at a kind of illustration of some of what we have said so far. The first one is mutualism. You will see it from the diagram that we have on the screen. Mutualism. You can see the arrow is going from A to B, and that of B is also going to A. So, and you see in this condition, one of them must be, the association is always obligatory. So that is mutualism. That is association between two organisms in which one has an obligatory role to play on the other one. So that kind of association is said to be mutualistic association. And the illustration too, that is called cooperation. Cooperation is such that the organism A and organism B have decided to live together. But by the time they now live together, one of them is having no obligation to each other. That is, it's not obligatory that they must live together. But the only thing is that they must cooperate with one another. So it is not the kind of association is not actually obligatory in that sense. Okay. So the next kind of illustration is an illustration of commensalism. Commensalism, as you can see it from the screen, this is a kind of association in which two organisms A and B is just one flow. A does not have B does not have anything thing to contribute. So A is just going towards B directly, and nothing, and I said nothing, nothing in that kind of association is said to be obligatory to each other. So you should actually take note of this. Take note of this. We have a kind of a commensalistic association in which, don't forget that you can actually get the definition from the definition even from that word commensal. So which has to do with Latin. Is a Latin word that means together. Come is a Latinized word that means together, and the second one is a mensa, that is table. It's a Latin word for table. So it's a kind of a relationship in which is only the commensal that benefits, while the other one is neither harm nor being helped. So you can see it is just unidirectional flow from A to B. So, and it is B that is benefiting. The other one, which is A, is neither harmed nor benefiting. So you have to take note. Come from together, they exist together. So commensalism. Commensal is talking about a table. So when you have two organisms in which the commensal benefits and the second organism is neither benefiting nor become in that kind of association. So, and you can see that. And the next one that we did not actually illustrate, and I didn't even mention it under that kind of interaction, is a predation. Predation is such that one organism that is always of bigger size is feeding on the one that is of a smaller size, so the prey. So the bigger one is called the predator, and the smaller one is called kind of association. Predator, just like one we are actually familiar with. Each of these, we are going to start picking each of these kind of interactions one after the other. At some point, we'll start picking them one after the other. We cite examples. We look at how they are closely being related. We are going to study them in details. So, but just today is just the introductory aspect of microbial interaction. So the next kind of illustration is parasitism. Just like I told you, this is a kind of association in which the parasites will depend on the hosts. So it is the hosts that will be losing, and the parasite will tend to benefit from that kind of association. So it's also a unidirectional benefit. It's a unidirectional association in which the parasite is going to benefit of association. So, and you can see what has actually happened. You can see A is known as the parasite and the B known as the host. So the parasite decide to live on. You can see that arrow, to live on. And if it decide to live on, that parasite is known as ectoparasite. And if it decide to live in, that is intracellular, that is that kind of parasite is called endoparasite. So we are going to see more of this as we actually proceed. So the next thing, the next kind of illustration is talking about competition. Competition. Just that I told you that organisms must continue to compete in their environment. They must continue to interact with their environment. You can see the two organisms now. A to A Then B to B, that when you look at that arrow very, very well, you will see that the arrow from A is going to A again, and you look at the shape that you have in red marker, you can see it is red. So two of them are actually competing. It is that red marker illustration is what is called they are actually fighting for the same resources. They are competing for the same resources, but unfortunately for A, the A cannot actually gain. One will outcompete the other for the site's resources. So at the end of the day, whenever there is competition, one will tend for the same. Don't forget that they are competing for the same resources. It could be space, it could be oxygen, it could be shelter, it could be anyone. But in a situation whereby you have one of the competitors having outsmart the other one for that same resources, that is the kind of association whereby we have it illustrated on the screen. So as you can see, A to A, no shaking. Then B to B. So B is now becoming exclusive or excluded from competing any longer. So that is where we said one outcompete the other for the same site resources. And the condition 2 is what you have, the illustration you now have below it, whereby you can see A to A, and you can see B to B now, but both of them coexist at a lower level. They decide to maintain their level because they share this very limited resources. So two of them will only coexist at the end of the day, giving birth to small letter A, and B giving birth to small letter B as well. Both of them coexist at lower level because they share limiting resources. So you should be able to know all this and be able to give a kind of illustration to this. So before we go, I want you to look at the other parts of this lecture, which has to do with microbial communities. Every organism must continue to exist in community. And don't forget that in community you have you have existence of diverse population coming together. So microbial community is always very, very dynamic. It's not one organism. It's not in an isolated population. So it is dynamic and very, very complex. The kind of association or interaction that you see in them is always very, very dynamic and very, very complex. Of a microbial community, highly dynamic and complex. Then again, they are highly structured. They have structural architecture to the level that, irrespective of the type of organism that is being involved, it is highly structured. It is highly organized. It is highly ordered. So that is the characteristics of microbial community. It is very, very complex. It is very, very organized, and it exists in such a way that it is highly structured. It is highly structured. Then under microbial communities, what do they do together? What kind of and don't forget that nobody will tend to exist in a community that is not going to be beneficial. The same thing with microorganisms. Microorganisms will continue to collaborate, to coexist together, and when they now coexist together, what are those things that they can form? Don't forget, even in human community now, in human community, some people that are of the same occupation, they have their own association, they have their own group that they will freely interact. If there's any problem, that is the first point of call for them to cry for help. So the same thing with microbial community. It is dynamic, it is highly complex, and it is very, very structured the same way. So when they tend to exist in a community, they will now have two kind of groups, or let me say two types of association that they want to form. You see, when you have association of students, it's what you call student union. So association of staff, they call it staff union. And what now combine all of them together, you now call them civil society organization. So the same thing with microbial communities. They tend to have their own association. And the first type of association that they will form is they will form a kind of biofilms. Biofilms, what you call biofilm. What is biofilms? Biofilms is an aggregation or collection or totality of microorganisms that they stick together, they will come together, and when they come together, for what purpose? They come together to stick to surfaces, so that it will be very difficult for any traditional for removing them traditionally. It will be very difficult. So if they exist in that kind of association, they will exhibit very cooperative behavior. They tend to cooperate with each other. They exhibit cooperative behavior. Not only that, they will share the same resources. They share the same resources, and you can now see that when we said microbial communities are always dynamic, very, very complex, but highly structured. You can see now when they form biofilms. Biofilms is a kind of a collection or aggregation of microorganisms that they will come together to stick to surfaces. For example, dental plaques. They come together for in plant roots. Why are they coming together? To stick to surfaces, so that they will be able to exhibit cooperative behavior. They will be able to share resources with each other, and they will be able to defend each other. So, and any association that you want to join in any community that cannot give you all these three, why are you joining in that kind of association? The same way with microorganisms. They will go and form association whereby they will be able, their cooperative existence is guaranteed. They will compete for the same resources. They share it together. Apart from that, they will be able to now protect or defend each other. That is called a biofilm. The next one of the next interaction is what is called the gauds. The gauds. That is a group of microorganisms that share the same metabolic activities. They share the same metabolic activities and interact with each other in a specific way. They tend to associate together, share similar metabolic activities together. That is, if they utilize nitrogen, what is the group of organisms of those that utilize nitrogen together? They are called the nitrogen fixing bacteria. And those ones that exist as methanogens, those ones that have to utilize methanes in order for them to be able to exist, they are called methanogens. So these are kind of organisms that are that compete, that they share similar metabolic activities together in a very specific way. And we have given you an example